Welcome back to another edition of History in Your Own Backyard. I'm Susie Selleck, and today we're in New Paris, Ohio. I'm joined by Joan Steinberger, the unofficial historian of New Paris, but after talking with you, I beg to differ that unofficial official title. I think you deserve official historian. You seem to really know your stuff about this beautiful town, this village. And I was actually hoping that you'd be able to tell us a little bit about the foundation, how this thing got started.
I would love to. Thank you very much for having me. I'm enjoying it so far.
Good.
Well, New Paris was started by a group of pioneers that came from Paris, Kentucky. And that's the reason they named our village New Paris, Ohio, because they thought it looked very much like Kentucky when they rounded the hill and saw the valley with the stream in it, and they thought this is the ideal place. And so they settled here, and then a few years later, that's when they started the village. Now, August 18th, 1817. And it was started up on the corner, Main Street and Washington Street, now named. The founders decided if they gave a lot to the first person that would settle here, they would give it to them for free.
Oh, wow.
So that's what it did. The building, as far as we know, is still standing. It is going to be sold at auction in December. It's a big, elongated building, and it's got the original rafters in it and everything, because it's purportedly the first place that was built. That's where everything began, right there at that corner.
Now, industry, as far as putting a village together, what industry first drove this town?
Well, the first big industry here, they were drilling for natural gas, and they hit this rock and found that it was limestone, and it was 100 feet thick. And so they eventually started the stone quarry, which we all call the stone quarry now. They employed 50 men, mostly local men. They had 3 stone crushers. In fact, it was the biggest quarrying business in the United States at one time.
Wow.
When they had to abandon finally, that's when the water from the springs started to come in and filled up, and now it's a recreational facility. This is now a campground for over 200 vehicles.
Really?
Yes, and they have boating and swimming and lots of activities down there. And then they have a big fireworks display on the 4th of July, and that's held down there. I went swimming there when I was a teenager every day, even when it rained.
Oh, yeah. No, the rain can't stop us from
No. I went fishing down there when it was not good enough to swim, and I took my girlfriend, and she didn't like worms, so I had to bait her hook all the time, so I didn't get very much fishing done because I was too busy with her worms.
So that's the recreational side. What about some celebrities? Did I hear some whispers that there have been a couple famous people around these parts?
Yes, David Purviance, who was a minister, and he came from Paris, Kentucky, in that area. He was the first minister here. He built the first church. And he was a statesman in Kentucky and also in Ohio for about 25 years. He was instrumental in securing the land for Miami University in Oxford, Ohio.
Yeah, wow.
Through him, he helped do that. This is way back. I mean, I'm talking about 1800s, you know.
Right.
Yeah, so, but he was very famous. He is buried behind my house in the Old North Cemetery.
Yeah.
Then we had, of course, my favorite, Benjamin Russell Hanmi, who was a minister of the church by the post office, United Brethren Church. He liked instruments, and he wanted to bring an organ and a flute into the church, but the congregation back then weren't too conducive to having musical instruments. So many of them were opposed that he resigned his pastorate because he was afraid it would split his congregation. So he left, and he started a singing school in New Paris, and that is where he wrote his famous Christmas carol, known all over the world now as Up on the Housetop.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, yes. Wow, really?
Yes, yes. So we think a lot, or at least I think a lot of Benjamin Hanmi.
Yeah, I think the whole country does. Maybe the whole world at this
Yes,
point
well,
thinks a lot of
it's
him.
been
That's a great song.
it's been recorded by Andy Williams, and I think the first one was probably Gene Autry. So
Yeah, I think you're right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, wow.
And I've heard it in commercials last Christmas a lot on TV.
So, anything else to
Well,
speak
there was
of?
one more.
Okay,
It was
yeah.
C.R. Koblenz.
Oh, who the
which was
elementary
the
school is named after, right?
Yeah.
C.R. Koblenz?
Well,
Okay.
It was the whole district was C.R. Koblenz district at one time.
Okay.
He was born in a log house north of New Paris, just outside of New Paris, and a great educator. He was a teacher and a principal and a superintendent, and finally ended up being the head honcho of Preble County education.
There's a couple of other really interesting buildings that we saw when we were coming in. The Mason Lodge, the Masonic Temple.
Yes.
That's something that's out on the, I think Washington
Yes,
Street? Yeah.
uh-huh.
Now, has
yes.
that always been in that building? Or
No.
Okay.
No, there was another building further north on Washington Street, and that building's been gone for years. Okay. But I think this one was built in 1935, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be.
Well, I just,
yes.
There was a couple churches, I think maybe the one on Cherry Street. Was that Christ Church? Do you know?
That's yes,
that's the original.
It was a Church of Christ. Yes.
Okay.
Christian church, actually, is what they called it.
Okay.
And that was the first one, really.
Oh, okay, in the town.
Well, yes, the ones that Proviance had was out of town when he started, and then they had an outdoor church even.
Oh, really?
Yeah, before they had another building.
I understand there's a hotel right outside of town that was the main hotel at one point. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, you're talking about the Cedar Springs Hotel. It was 100 rooms.
Okay.
3 floors and 33 on each floor. And it was very popular because there were 5 medicinal springs on the property.
Really?
Which people came to be cured of arthritis and rheumatism and all kinds of things. They were all tested for their medicinal qualities. And people came from everywhere in the United States to stay at the hotel and get the water.
Wow.
They also bottled the water and sent it all over the United States. It was called Navajo because the Indians were around here before we were.
Yeah, yeah.
And so they bottled and shipped it everywhere. And my grandfather actually worked there as a boy.
Really?
Uh-huh. Yes.
This was back before bottled water got popular, right?
This was, yes, this was.
Were you guys the reason why this happened? Was this you guys? You did this?
Well, we'll take credit for it. Why not?
That's awesome. When did that water supply of medicinal, did that run out? Or
yes,
what
finally.
happened?
It finally did. But the hotel was very popular. It had all kinds of activities there for people to do. So they came by horse and buggy, whatever. They also ran a spur of the interurban from New Westville into New Paris to bring the travelers in. And that was quite a big thing back in that day.
What's the tallest buildings around here?
Okay, the tallest building is the one on the corner of Main and Washington, and that was the IOOF, that's Oddfellows. They built that, and purportedly the bricks were made locally.
Really?
Yes, and that was built in the 1700s or 1800s. And now it used to be grocery stores and implement places and hardware stores, and up on the 3rd floor they had meeting rooms, and they also had dances and all kinds of entertainment up on the 3rd floor. But then there was a furniture store there, the last resident. Now it is the New Paris Antique Mall.
I can see why you dig your town's history. Yeah, I can see it.
Well, it's interesting, I think. It always has been to me.
Yeah, well, and the way you describe it, I can tell you're passionate about where you've where you've been and how the town's grown, and obviously the things that you guys have gone through as a town to make it the really cool community that it is today. So that's very awesome. And yeah, I just thank you for your time getting to talk with
I
you
wanted to tell you one more thing. My great-granddaughters are the 9th generation of our family to have lived here.
Wow.
So I've been here forever. I'm a lot older than I think.
You know what? That's the ticket. You're a lot older than you think. That's perfect. I love that. No, it's great. Thank you for watching another edition of History in Your Own Backyard. I'm Susie, and today we were in New Paris, Ohio. We were getting to talk with Joan here on the great history and today the tradition of the town of New Paris. Remember, travel slowly and stop often. Bye for now.